Alright everybody, what's going on? This is the Specter comp you have at home. So starting up front here, we have the Harrington Arms compensator. I'm running a Faxon barrel. We have the RXP compact slide with the Romeo 1 up on top here, the X5 full grip module, and an Apex trigger. Also got the TLR1 down here. This is the Specter comp you have at home. It's a flush mount-ish comp P320 build, which is a fantastic shooting firearm. Let's dive in a little bit here. So some things that I really like about the P320 are the looks. I mean, these things look fantastic. They kind of give that classic 226 look, but with a striker fire trigger, which I'm a big fan of personally. I really like the way that this specific setup shoots. It's really flat shooting. You can shoot it pretty fast, and it's very comfortable in your hands. Now, I will say this thing is absolutely massive. Putting it in the hand cannon category, as you can see, it literally is larger than my hand, and I have a very large hand. So, what are some things on the original P320 that I was not a fan of? That would be the trigger and the high bore axis. So the trigger on the original P320 has a little bit of a longer reset, and in my opinion, it's just a little bit too long for me personally. Now, for a defensive pistol, it's a good trigger for a defensive use, but for what I'm doing with this thing as a range toy and just all around possible competition or just a fun shooting gun, I decided to go with this Apex trigger here, which, as you can see, there's pretty much no pre-travel and then a nice clean break. The reset on these is a little weird. It's very light and it's kind of long. So as you'll see in a little bit when I show some shooting film, I had some trigger freeze with this. The first time that I tried to run it really fast, it was 18 degrees out today. So, you know, that's also a factor. But I did get some trigger freeze where I wasn't fully resetting the trigger. And then when I would go to shoot, obviously it wouldn't go because the trigger didn't reset. Now, some things that I really like about this pistol here is this grip module has really good texture and it's really comfortable in your hand. They did a nice job with this beaver tail here and a good job with this finger cut here, and then it feels really nice in your hand. Now, one thing that I just inherently have a problem with the P320s is this high bore axis here. So the high bore axis gives you more recoil in a stock configuration without a compensator or something like that, just due to the fact that your hand can't get high up on the slide here. You got about a ½ inch of frame above the beaver tail, which is about as high as your hand's going to be able to get. Now, some things you can do, SIG sells the Specter comps, or you can run a compensator like I am here from Harrington Arms, and you can also get a gas pedal for your takedown lever to help mitigate that recoil from the high bore axis on these things. Accuracy in this firearm actually surprises me almost every time I shoot it. It's just as accurate as my 2011. It's just as accurate as every other pistol that's considered a high accuracy pistol. And I genuinely really enjoy shooting this because it's very flat shooting. Now, obviously it's a compensated pistol, so if it wasn't flat shooting, that would be a problem. But this is a very flat shooting and fun to shoot pistol. I'm a big fan of the grip texture in this grip module here specifically. I had an original RXP compact, which I was not a fan of that grip module. It had too many round edges, didn't really feel that good in your hand. So I ended up building this thing because I wanted a really fun range toy or competition gun out of this P320 because I don't use it for any defensive purposes. So I thought it would be nice to just have it for fun, like, you know, every now and again, take this thing out, shoot it, and enjoy it. That being said, let's talk a little bit about some of the cons that I have with this firearm as well. So some things that I don't like about this firearm are the high bore axis. Now, for some people, they're going to say, just control recoil, it's not that bad, which you're not wrong. It's only a 9mm, so it's really not terrible. But the one thing with it is, with all these other pistols on the market, especially now everybody's trying to clone Glock, which does it really good, and CZs do it really good with a low bore axis. So, you know, you have options out of the factory that are going to shoot a lot flatter than these pistols. Now, when you get into the Specter comps or, you know, a build like this, which is kind of a clone-ish of a Specter comp, you do get a really flat shooting pistol, But it's unfair to compare that to a stock pistol, because if you put a compensator on a Glock, on a CZ, it's obviously going to shoot even flatter than this would, just due to the inherent design of having a high bore axis. So one thing that I am a big fan of from the factory are these suppressor height night sights. I think they do a really good job co-witnessing with the Romeo 1. And I'm a big fan of this. I like the big window that you get. It's been pretty durable. As you can see, it's been to hell and back, and it's still running. The finish didn't hold up too great, but overall the optic itself is. Another thing that I really like about this grip module is you have 5 mounting slots in your rail down here. So you have the option to run a lot of different accessories down the bottom here, and overall it makes it a very versatile pistol. Now, another thing that you can do with these is you can take the full-size grip, chop the X over, or the leftover of the frame, and turn it into like a full size with a compact slide, kind of like a 19X or something like that. Now, SIG does also sell some of their own versions of that, because as we all know, there's about 1,000,004 different versions of the P320s. Now, quick to touch on the P320 issues, or sort of issue. I think, you know, we've seen in the news that these things go off on their own. I have 4,000 or 5,000 rounds through this gun over the past 5 years, and I have never had this thing attempt to go off on its own, not with the factory trigger and not with this Apex trigger. Now, mine was purchased post the voluntary upgrade program, which maybe those ones before had more of an issue, but this thing has been fine for me. I've tried all the tests and the tricks of smacking it on the striker plate, throwing it on the ground, doing all that, and it's held up fine for me. I haven't had any issues where this gun would go off on its own. The only time that I can make this gun go off is if I pull the trigger. So with that being said, I think something that could be causing some of the problem is the fact that they don't have a trigger bar safety, combined with the fact that people aren't necessarily running them in the proper holsters. So some people are running them in holsters for other SIGs that are similar but not perfect, or even with the P320, there's so many different options for, you know, grip modules, slide lengths, barrel lengths, accessories, etc., that, you know, you can buy a P320 holster that is not going to work with your P320. So just keep in mind when you're buying a holster for your P320, make sure you're buying something that's for your specific model of gun, because you can't just necessarily go out, buy a P320 compact holster and throw a full size in it, or vice versa. You're going to get movement, you're going to get play, you might not cover the trigger enough, and that could lead to the trigger being pulled accidentally, making it more of a negligent discharge issue, in my opinion. Now, you know, I personally haven't had the opinion or the experience of having it fire on its own. So if somebody has had that experience, let us know down below more, because I feel like a lot of times with, you know, what we see in the news, it's very hearsay story. It's, oh, it went off on its own in a holster, or oh, I had it laying down in my bag and it went off on its own, or something like that. But if you look at it, there's been about 2.5 million P320 sold, and there's only a reported roughly 120, making it a 0.0048% of the P320s that have reported self-firing. I mean, that means you got a 99.996% chance of this thing not going off on its own. So in my opinion, it's kind of hard to blame the gun when 99.99% of them haven't had these problems. But then again, 99% of these also probably aren't being used on a daily basis in duty use. Maybe not that high percent, but you get what I'm saying. So overall, my thoughts on the Specter comp at home: this gun is a blast to shoot. Now, I will say the trigger leaves a little bit to be desired on the table, even with this Apex trigger upgrade. Now, there's other aftermarket triggers that I could try out, but I do like this one for what it is. It's just the reset to me is a bit longer than I want, and coming from other platforms, this is not my main platform that I shoot. So coming from other platforms, I do end up getting a little bit of trigger freeze because it's a longer reset than I'm used to. Now, once you're adjusted to it, shooting it that day, you're going to be fine. Or if you only have this, you're going to be fine. That being said, I would recommend a P320, especially one like this, or a Specter comp, or any of the compensated models in general. I don't really like the compact versions of these. I think the compact versions are just really not the best option for anyone on the market. I mean, yeah, they look cool or whatever you want to say, or maybe you're really into the fact that the military contract picked these things, which if that's your reasoning for liking these, don't use that in public when trying to make an argument for them. But the compact versions of these, in my opinion, are just lacking in what every other compact can do. I mean, even the 365, especially the X Macro lines, they shoot so much flatter than a compact P320. It's kind of like, why would you buy the bulkier, bigger brother when you could just buy the better concealed carry option from the factory? But that's just my take on it. If you're going to stick with SIG and you're between the 365 and the 320, but you need it for kind of a do-all, I would probably go with like an X Macro, good in the middle ground between the tiny 365 and something like this, a massive full-size 320. Now, you know, if you're looking for a range toy, a competition gun, or even a home defense gun, these are great options because with the full-size grip, you can get yourself a 21 round mag, so you get 22 round capacity with +1. So that's a great start for home defense. And then if you have a spare mag, you're sitting there at 44 rounds or 43 rounds that you can have at your disposal in a relatively quick time. And that should be able to get you out of any home defense scenario that you find yourself in. So overall, I would recommend the P320. And I think, you know, if you're going to get one, you may want to consider something with a compensator. You might be fine with the full-size slide, but if you're going to get anything in a compact configuration, you're going to want to have that compensator. Thanks for watching. This is my thoughts on the 320.